The spring afternoon shimmered with a soft, golden sunlight, as if nature itself had dressed for the occasion. The air smelled faintly of the thousands of blooming white roses that had been woven into the garden archway. The lawn sparkled with the white petals that had been scattered like a soft, silent confetti, and a gentle and very beautiful breeze carried the sound of violins over the happy and very loving chatter of the family and friends. It was the kind of a perfect and very beautiful day that felt completely and utterly impossible to ruin. Until the sound of the sirens, a harsh, ugly, and very unwelcome sound, cut through the laughter. For a moment, no one moved. The groom, a tall and very steady man in a crisp, black tuxedo, stood at the altar, his own hands trembling just slightly as he waited for the love of his life to reach him. But as the flashing red and blue lights of the police cars began to paint the perfectly manicured hedges, the happy, smiling faces of the guests faltered. A whisper, a cold and very familiar whisper of a fear, began to ripple through the crowd. What the guests didn't know, what the police didn't know, was that a single, prejudiced phone call was about to set in motion a chain of events that would leave an entire city speechless. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the profound and very powerful act of standing up against prejudice, please take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with your own thoughts, and subscribe to our channel, Beacon of Hope Stories. Your support helps us to bring more of these real and very powerful stories to life. But the story of this day didn't begin at the sound of the sirens. It began years and years earlier, when the mayor, who was then just a young man named David, was no one's first, or even second, choice for success. Growing up in a modest, and often very difficult, neighborhood, he had faced poverty, he had faced discrimination, he had faced more than his fair share of doors that had been slammed in his face. He had worked 2 back-breaking jobs all through college, often going without sleep, and he was driven by a deep and very profound belief that a real and very lasting change was possible if you were just willing to stand up and to work for it. His rise to become the mayor of this city had not been through any political privilege. It had been through grit, through countless and often very thankless community projects, and through a deep and very real empathy for the very same people who had been so often and so easily forgotten by the system. And it was during one of those long and very difficult community drives that he had met her, Amara, a brilliant and very beautiful teacher who volunteered her own very precious weekends to tutor the children who couldn't afford any private help. They had connected not through the grand and very empty gestures of a shallow and very fleeting romance, but through their own very shared values. Through the long late nights they had spent planning new and very innovative youth programs, and through the quiet and very intimate conversations they had had about what a home, a real and very safe home, really means. Their love had grown slowly and steadily, with a kind of a deep and very solid foundation that made their wedding vows so much more than just a series of a simple and very pretty words. Yet, even as the mayor, David knew that prejudice was not something that you could ever truly outrun. It was always there, lurking in the dark and very ugly shadows of the minds that were so unwilling to change. It was there in the quiet and very pointed, sideways glances he would get at the local grocery store. It was there in the hushed and very resentful murmurs he would hear when he would walk into certain very exclusive rooms. And now, on the one single day that was meant to mark the start of a new and very hopeful chapter in his life, it had barged in uninvited and dressed in the flashing, very ugly lights of a suspicion and of a hate. As the uniformed officers began to approach, the tension in the garden became a living, breathing thing. Some of the guests, with a sad and very practiced instinct, stepped back, their own joyful faces now shadowed by a creeping and very familiar sense of an unease. Amara, the beautiful and very radiant bride, froze mid-step, torn between a profound and very real disbelief and of deep and very painful dread. She had grown up in this town, she knew, with a certainty that was as cold and as hard as the diamond on her finger. What these kinds of assumptions, these kinds of a quiet and very ugly prejudices could do. Her own father's grip tightened on her arm as if he could somehow, and with the sheer and very desperate force of his own paternal love, shield her from the ugliness that was now so uninvitedly crashing into her perfect and very beautiful. The small and very innocent children were pulled closer to their parents. Their happy and very musical giggles now replaced by a new and very heavy silence. And the neighbor, the white neighbor who had made the call. She now appeared in her own perfectly manicured front yard, her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a smug, very satisfied line. She was waiting for her validation. She was waiting for the sight of her own very ugly fears being justified. But the moment the lead officer, a man with a weary and very cynical look in his eyes, caught sight of the groom's face, everything, absolutely everything changed. The officer's own professionally stern brows shot upward. His jaw went slack. And he stopped so abruptly, so completely, that the other younger officers who were following just behind him almost stumbled into him. They weren't just looking at any man at the altar. They were looking at someone they had worked alongside, someone they respected, and someone they had even, from a great and very real distance, admired. The man in the tuxedo wasn't just a groom. He was the mayor of their entire city. The realization when it came hit the small and now very tense group of police officers like a wave crashing against a hard stone wall. In an instant, the entire and very dangerous dynamic of the situation shifted from a quiet and very ugly suspicion to a new and very profound and very professional shock. The cameras on the guests' phones, which had been held with a trembling and very fearful uncertainty just a moment before, now caught the one, single, and very telling moment when the lead officer turned his head and shot a long, hard, and completely unreadable glance toward the neighbor, the woman who was still standing so smugly and so confidently in her own perfect front yard. And she, in that one, single, solitary moment, under the full and now very heavy weight of his gaze, now looked pale and very, very rattled. This was not the chaotic and very dangerous scene she had so confidently and so hopefully expected to witness. This wasn't a gang, this wasn't a fight, and this was not a dangerous and very unwelcome crowd. This was a lawful and very beautiful and very elegant wedding, and it was being led by the highest and most respected public servant in their entire community, a man who had spent his entire and very public career fighting for the very same, very real equality, for the very same and very beautiful unity, for the bridging of the very same deep and very ugly divides that people like her with. Their quiet and very poisonous prejudices worked so very, very hard to keep alive. The mayor, known for his quiet and very powerful, calm, and his profound and very real dignity, even under the most immense and very public of pressures, stepped forward. The very air seemed to still around him. His beautiful fiancée's eyes, which had been so full of a shocked and very real pain just a moment before, now glistened with a new and very different kind of an emotion, a mixture of the profound and very beautiful joy of their wedding day and the sharp and very real sting of its ugly and very public interruption. The guests, sensing the turning of the tide, began to hold their heads a little higher. The police officers, their own demeanor now having shifted from a cold and very professional authority to a new and very genuine apology, exchanged a few quiet words with the mayor before they, too, with a final and very respectful nod, left, without making a single solitary arrest. Some of the guests even shook their hands as they departed, a quiet and very unspoken acknowledgement that they, too, had been caught in the middle of someone else's ugly and very personal bias. In the neighbor, she had slipped back inside. Her own perfect house, her blinds now drawn tighter than they had ever been before, a silent and very pathetic testament to her own, and now very public, shame. And the rest of the wedding, it unfolded with a new and very beautiful and very powerful defiance, a defiance that was wrapped in a quiet and very profound grace. David and Amara went on to exchange their vows, their own voices now strong, and completely and utterly unwavering. Their first kiss, as husband and wife, beneath the beautiful and very fragrant arch of the white roses, was not just a simple and very romantic declaration of their love. It was a statement that their joy would not be stolen, a statement that their dignity could not and would not be broken, and a statement that a prejudice, when it is so bravely and so publicly exposed, so often looks so much smaller and so much more pathetic than it pretends to be. And when they danced, for the very first time, as husband and wife, the applause from their family and from their friends was so much louder than the ugly and very intrusive sound of the sirens had ever been. It wasn't just a celebration. It was an act of a profound and very beautiful resilience. It was a testament to the power of a community. It was a celebration of the kind of a deep and very real, and very powerful love that can make even the ugliest and most painful of moments fade into the background. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who believes in the profound and very beautiful power of a love over a hate. And subscribe to our channel, Beacon of Hope Stories, so that we can keep telling the stories that truly and deeply matter. And before we end, we would love to hear from you. What would you have done if you were a guest at this wedding? Leave your own personal thoughts in the comments below. Because sometimes the most powerful and most lasting change in our world starts not in the grand and very empty halls of power, but in the quiet and very beautiful way that ordinary people, just like you, choose to stand up for what is right. One moment, one choice, and one beautiful and very powerful wedding at a time. Thank you for watching.